one in four higher education students have reported mental health problems. That's 1, 2, 3, 4. For every fourth person who would have cried and reported mental health to our friends or family. If you've ever cried or felt distressed because of assignment, can you do that by showing? Yeah, show of hands. I take it then that the rest have never had problems with assignments. I stand before you today as a doctorate student, part-time lecturer, and a qualified mental health practitioner. Once upon a time though, I couldn't afford my fees. I was then an international student. I cried. I couldn't sleep at night. I'd wake up in cold sweat. It felt like I couldn't breathe. Because I wasn't sure where I was going to get the money for the second and the third year. I went to my personal tutor and I tried to explain what I was feeling. But I couldn't articulate it because I didn't understand it. She didn't understand it either. Because culturally, mental health meant nothing to me. It was a confusing time. Every time I left my personal tutor, I felt even worse and I cried more. When I completed the first year, I quit my studies because I couldn't afford the fees. I decided to work for a homeless charity in London. The men and women who visited this homeless charity reported similar symptoms. They cried a lot. They couldn't sleep. How could they? They lived on the streets. There was this feeling of hopelessness and worthlessness and confusion. I was getting paid for this role, and I felt guilty. I didn't think I deserved the money. So I asked my manager if I could resign to offer to volunteer instead at a women's refuge. At this women's refuge, I met women who had come out of prostitution, domestic abuse, and arranged marriages. I began to notice the same symptoms and more. So in addition to what I felt as an international student, and what the homeless men and women felt, these women talked about wanting to take their own lives, cutting themselves. Just there's that question, what is the point? They asked me. So now I was volunteering, but I still didn't understand what was happening to us. So one day when I got home, I Googled crying all the time. This was one thing, one language that we all understood, that we all spoke. Be it sadly. I saw mental health and I read and read. No matter how much I read about it, I did not understand it. I rang a friend of mine and I asked her, what is this thing? And she said, oh, listen, you should read mental health nursing. Luckily, I just received my British passport in July of 2010. So of course, tuition fees wasn't my problem anymore. I was really happy because I wanted to understand this thing. These feelings that we couldn't articulate, this thing that broke us down and woke us up at night, this thing that made us feel like we couldn't breathe. I wanted to learn more. So the first day of induction, I was proud to walk into this university. I was late to induction. 5 of us walked in. The other 4 walked past, didn't acknowledge the lecturer. I stopped and apologized for being late. She looked at me and she said, sorry for yourself. I was taken aback. And then she looked at me and said, why are you here, she asked. I'm here for the mental health nursing degree. Check the microphone. It's a full room. And she said, go to the magazines because you will never be a nurse. My confidence crushed. I felt that little. I felt like crying. So I went in and I sat at the back of the room. Throughout the first year, I was lucky not to encounter this lecturer. Sadly though, in the second and the third year, she became my personal tutor. She bullied me, she harassed me, and she threatened me. She said things like, you're wasting your time. You would never be a nurse. you will fail your dissertation. I was anxious, depressed, and I suffered panic attacks. See, now I knew what I was feeling. I was becoming a mental health nurse. I could articulate this. And in addition to that, I could actually deal with it. I knew a few things that I could do to help myself. In addition to her bullying and harassment and threats, I suffered sexual harassment from 2 qualified male nurses who were my mentors on placement. One of them rubbed his hand on my thigh and the other one grabbed my breast. I reported them. And there was investigation. I never knew the outcome. To date, I still don't know. And for all I care, they're probably mental health. You know what managers promoted. Anyway, at the end of the degree, I came out with a first-class honors degree. And I became the first Black British to receive a first-class honors degree in mental health nursing at Ivy University in London. I was happy. Phew. Because regardless of everything that happened to me, I focused. I slept in the library. And I told my friends and family what I was feeling. And I made sure that I didn't focus on their abuse or their threats or their harassment. I focused on the finishing line, that qualification. When I finished the mental health nursing, I thought, that's not enough. First of all, I didn't want to practice as a nurse because those 2 male nurses were still there. I wanted to learn more. So I decided to study for a master's in public health. I applied to university. I was offered scholarship by the same university that I quit a few years ago when I couldn't pay my fees. So I walked in there. But I began to notice something. Most people in my class were international students. You get in my story now. I began to recognize that thing. Anxiety and depression, insomnia, feeling of worthlessness, and just heartbroken, and this feeling when you wake up at night and you can't breathe. That thing, when you speak to your personal tutor and she just looks at you like, take time off, they say. Like, you're not good enough right now. I am a mental health nurse, qualified. But in my capacity as a nurse within the university setting, I had nothing that I could use in helping them. Because you see, the Nursing and Midwifery Council code does not cover me within an academic setting. Because it is not a clinical setting. And my classmates, they were not my patients. So I advised them to go to their GPs, speak to friends and family members, visit the Health and Wellbeing Center. They did go. You have to understand, for international students, they have sacrificed a lot to come down to a strange country, to settle, and to study for a better tomorrow, better career, and to be able to care for themselves and their family members. It is very difficult to contextualize mental health because it is viewed in different cultures. When I finished the MSc, something was beginning to boil inside me. I applied the same thing that I applied when I did the BSc, and I became the first British female to get a distinction, and I won the Dean's Award for the highest achieving postgraduate student. And this told me that it doesn't matter what mental health you feel. If you just focus, you would achieve that. Fortunately, I was made a seminar tutor at this university. So remember, I came from not being able to pay my fees to this scholarship. Now I was a lecturer to 175 undergraduate students. The first day, I introduced myself as a mental health nurse. From then onwards, students would come into my office. They would book appointments, and I'll prepare lecture notes. More than 70% of them came in to talk about mental health. The problem is they couldn't articulate it. They didn't understand it. They didn't know the signs and symptoms of depression, anxiety. I happen to be, today, the only mental health nurse at this university. So what I did was, I put a piece of paper on my wall. And every time a student came in and reported mental health, I would put a number on it. When it got to 75, I began to take interest in this topic. You see, mental health in higher education is not just about the students. It's about their family members, the community that they live in, study in, and socialize in. Mental health among us is on the rise. It is a significant public health issue that warrants more attention than the government, higher education institutions, and the policymakers are willing to give. We isolate ourselves, we cry, we cut ourselves, and we're ashamed of it. And we fail. Some of us quit our studies because we don't know what it is and we don't know how to talk about it. In my opinion, higher institutions, they perpetuate negative mental health for us. For example, by the kind of lecturers that they employ, the contents of the module, and this extreme capitalist assignment-based turning thing system that works for them, though not for us. We are the future workforce. So there needs to be a shift from this capitalist, neoliberal system to a system that recognizes us as the tomorrow, because we are tomorrow. However, we must applaud the universities that have stepped forward and put their hands up to say, we have lost this number of students to suicide. University of Bristol, for instance. We have safer suicide programs, University of Worcester. And we have amazing counseling team, University of Nottingham. By 2025, there will be 262 million higher education students. Good news and bad news. The good news is there will be more of us supporting ourselves. The bad news is 1 in 4 of us might suffer a mental health problem. And this might end in suicide. Welcome then to the halls of our there. In the last 10 years, 50% more suicides among us. Daniel Moon, Raphael, Lara Nasiru, Alexandra Patel, Alexandra Keckman, Lucy, and Mia. We are dying. We don't talk about it. This is our story. Our narratives. Our experiences. And for some of us, it's become all the silver linings in our dark clouds. So I leave you with this quote. In the absence of a positive mental health, the student experience is hindered and our academic achievements limited. Thank you.